Oh, we're live already. I was trying to take a video. Okay, we're live at Coffee and Kabbalah, Parshat Va'era, and we're going to talk today about confronting our fears and the prerequisite to leaving any of our inner struggles and inner challenges, leaving Mitzrayim. So let us jump right in. Thank you so much to everyone who's joining. Thank you to Marylin for sponsoring the shir in honor of her mom, Shifra, Tzvia, Bas, Esther, Hencha, and Abraham, Ya'kov, Hecha, for Shirly, who passed away 1 week ago, Holocaust survivor. And thank you for being here. Okay, so Parshat Va'era. If you want to hear everything leading up to this, watch the last shiur, part 1 of Parshat Va'era. Now we're going to talk about the this interesting dynamic and story in this week's Parsha, where Moshe and Aaron come before Paro and perform a really unusual miracle, right? Before the 10 plagues happen, right? Hashem speaks to Moshe and Aaron. This is in your source sheets, and we'll read them as well. These source sheets are actually made by Rabbi Jacobson. This is a shir he gave at least 15 or 20 years ago. That is incredible. Oh, wow. Yeah, one amazing shir. So Moshe answered Hashem. He said, they're not going to believe me. They didn't listen to me now. They said Hashem didn't appear to you. You're just some crazy guy. They're not going to listen to me. So Hashem says, Hashem says, I'm going to give you a sign. You can go before the Jewish people with this sign so that they'll know that you're a man of God and you're not just some random person that they should stone to death. Right? He says, they're going to kill me because I made things worse for them. So Hashem says to Moshe, instead, I'm going to give you a sign. What is this sign? He says, what are you holding in your hand? Right? It is how every magician starts his trick. He says, what do I have in my hand? I have my magic wand. This is Moshe's magic wand. Now it says, what is in your hand? And he says, it's a mateh. It's a stick. Right? I'm holding a stick. He says, throw the stick to the ground. And suddenly, there's a magic trick appears, right? He throws it to the ground, and it became a snake, and Moshe ran away. Moshe runs away from the snake. He's scared of snakes, right? Like we all are. It's a serpent. It's a deadly snake. Then Hashem says to Moshe, grab its tail. Send out your hand, grab its tail. So let's say this is a snake. Take its tail, and he extends his hand. And he grabs the tail of the snake and turn back into a snake. And he's like, now you go do this trick before the Jewish people, and they're going to say, okay, Moshe's not some guy. He's clearly knows what he's doing. He has God with him. We don't know what he just did, but he's a man of God. So we'll believe you, Moshe, right? That's what happens, right? So just so you know, the name matzah, the word stick, is mentioned so many times in 6 Parsha. It's like Moshe and his stick are one. Are so intertwined. When did Moshe get this stick? And what is the source of the stick? Do you remember? We shared this last week. That Moshe found the stick, right? Moshe found the stick in Yisro's backyard, right? Where did Yisro get the stick? This stick originated from Adam Harishon. It was a stick that Hashem gave Adam as a walking stick in Gan Eden. This stick was then passed down from Adam. It became to Yaakov's possession, then Yosef's possession. Now Yosef passes away. Yisro is an advisor of Paro. He sees the stick. He says, that's gorgeous. It's made out of sapphire. It's beautiful. It must be really holy and special. And he took the stick home. He puts it in his yard. It attaches itself into the ground. And from then on, years pass. No one could take out the stick. Moshe comes to Midian. He meets his wife, Zipporah. He comes to the yard, right? And Yisro's like, who's this dude you brought home? And then Moshe sees a stick. He's like, oh, nice stick. He picks it up. It comes right out. And Yisro says, okay, I know this is a man of God. I know I can trust this man. No, Moshe easily picked it up. It belongs to him. It's Moshe's staff. It is where the source of Harry Potter and the magic wand came from, right? The stick chooses you, right? The wand chooses, was that the hat? Or your wand chooses you, right? Moshe's wand chose him. Moshe's stick is not just a walking stick. It is his magic wand. It is his wand, the source of all magic wands that he does all of his things from. Now, I heard the most beautiful thing from the Lubavitcher Rebbe about the stick that I never heard before. Rebbe says that on the stick that Moshe took from Yisro, who got from Yosef, right, from Adam Rishon, was written the names of all the Avos and the names of the 6 Imahos.
Oh my God.
So it says that on the stick was written the 3 fathers and the 6 mothers, including Bilhah and Zilpah.
Where is it?
So it made me feel a lot better. I don't know where the stick is now, but it was made out of sapphire. It had godly powers clearly because 5 of the plagues were done with it, with Moshe's stick. And where do we see that? There's a hint to it in this week's Parsha. It says Mazeb in last week's Parsha, where Hashem says to Moshe, I'm going to go to the Jewish people. This is still when Moshe's by the burning bush, right? He says, I'm going to go to them and they're not going to believe me. And Hashem says, Mazeb biyadecha, what's in your hand? In the Torah, the hey in ma, zeh is skipped, is missing. And there's one of the Mefarshim say, I forget which one, that it's a hint that only 5, mazeh is 5, only 5 out of the 10 plagues will be performed by the stick, not the other 5. So only you'll see in the text, only 5 will be performed by the 6. So he's saying, what is this in your hand? There's a stick. It's missing 5, but you should know 5 of these plagues are going to be performed with this stick. So don't lose a stick.
Let me go back to the rock being hit the stick. The stick is like a plain stick and a stick that blooms. This is something like you said, a different type of stick that's magic, and you just said...
There's two sticks. There's Moshe's stick and Aaron's stick.
Where does it say has sackcloth? Where's that?
That's in the Mefarshim, what it was written at.
So
what was
magical.
But you will see that the stick is mentioned constantly. That he says he went with his stick in his hand. Take the stick in your hand. He carried the stick in his hand. Constantly, if you look, right? He says, what are you holding? He says, I'm holding a stick, right? He hit the rock with the stick. There's a lot of, his wand was a part of him. His stick was like a medium to bring down miracles, which is really deep, right? And we're going to talk about that today. Okay. So he says, another person says that, okay, I'm getting off on tangents. There's a lot. So Moshe has his wand, chose him because it was stuck in the ground. And then suddenly it chose him, right? Everything amazing in this world, any fascinating thing like that part of Harry Potter, it comes from Torah, right? The hat, the talking hat in Harry Potter, right? It comes from the talking hat. Everything's about the stick. You'll see constantly that he mentions his wand or stick, his matzah. I call it a magic wand. That's just my thoughts. You know, that's just my silly way of like imagining it to make it more exciting. But okay, so now Moshe comes. It says that so they did that. So the Hashem gave Moshe that sign to tell the Jewish people, and he also told them to do the same sign but differently before Paro to convince Paro, because Paro's saying, "Who's this God?" He's like, "I'll tell them. This is what you have to do before the plagues." Right? We're getting a lot of tangents. So now we come to this week's Parsha, right? So Moshe, the first time he does it, he does this actually a few times. First, he does it before Hashem. Hashem says, throw your stick to the ground. It turned into a snake and he runs away from it. We're talking about Moshe's magic wand.
So cool.
This is it, guys. This is it. You don't see the names of the 6 imahos. Then Moshe does the stick. It doesn't say in the pasuk for the Jewish people, for the Zakanim, they believe him. Now, Vayava Moshe Va'era na Paro. Now they're doing the same thing to Paro and all of his advisors. Vayasu Cain, and they did what Hashem told them. Kasher, this is in this week's parsha. Kasher Siva Hashem, like Hashem told them to do. Vayashlich Aaron es Mateo. This time Aaron is doing it. Aaron is doing the with his stick as also magic wand. As his Mateo lifnei Paro, he puts his stick down. He throws his stick down before Paro lifnei Vada Vahi Latanan, and it becomes a serpent. Vayikra Gam Paro Chachamim, right? And Paro says, okay, we could do the same trick. He calls them. They do the same thing with their lahatim. It says with their they're actually their wands, right? They took their wands, not as the walking sticks. They took their wands. Like, we do that trick too. Tadam. Then they put their sticks actually and they became serpents. And then the climax of this miracle happens. This time it's different. Suddenly, Aaron's stick, Aaron's magic wand, swallows their sticks. Their sticks, not even their snakes. Yes, it swallows their sticks. That is in this week's Parsha. Now, what is the deep message there, right? What is the deeper idea in this? This is what you have to do before the 10 plagues. How is this going to break the klipa of Mitzrayim? How does this help us, enable us to leave our klipa, right? Our limitations, our coverings, our masks. What is actually going on here on a deeper level? You've come to the right place. Okay, so there's Rabbi YY brings 2 amazing teachings on this idea. That tell us a very deep message, how Hashem was empowering Moshe then, all the way back then, right? Hashem is telling Moshe's scared to go. He's still happily living with this nice family in Midian, shepherding sheep, right, by a burning bush, and he's trying to say, like, just leave me, like, let me live my life. They're not going to believe me, and Hashem is trying to encourage him to go, right? The Alshich, he's buried in Efrat. He has an amazing teaching on how to confront our fears. He says that Moshe is now afraid, and Hashem is encouraging him, and this is a message for all of us, how to confront our fears. And it's hidden in this message of turning a stick into a snake or grabbing onto the stick. So Paro is actually compared to the snake. So he says, who is the snake? The snake is Paro. Paro is compared to the great serpent. He considered himself a great serpent, a rat coming out of the Nile. And he called himself a Tanan and a Gadol. The snake is Paro. And Moshe is afraid of Paro, right? And the stick represents godliness. The stick represents Kedusha. It's Moshe's matzah. It's Moshe's connection to Kedusha. It's the Or Yashar, right? It's the straightness. It's coming from light. So Moshe is afraid of Paro. And Hashem is telling him how to confront your fear. So this is, the Alshich says something really incredible. Where is it? In your sources. The source for Paro being called the serpent is in Yechezkel. In Navi Yechezkel, he says, speak to Hashem. He says, Hine alecha Paro melech Mitzrayim hatanim hagadol harobet b'toch ya'arav. The great serpent that lies in the middle of its river that says, my river is my own. Yili ori b'nisanya. This is my river and I created it. Right? That's the source of Paro and the klipa being that. Now he says this. Kemashal hazeh, inyan Moshe and Paro. This is a metaphor. Hashem is telling him, this is representing your relationship with Paro. He says, originally you have a stick in your hand, you're holding it, and it's a stick. That represents Paro in different stages. He says, first, you grew up with Paro in his palace. And Paro was like a stick in your hand. You weren't afraid of him. He was nothing. You weren't afraid of Paro. He was like a putty in your hand. He was your Saba, your step-grandfather, your stepfather that raised you. It says that Paro would hold Moshe on his lap and cuddle him. And Moshe would take his crown and say, like, wearing his hat. And Paro loved it. But then his advisor said, this is worrisome, right? This is needing something more. But Paro loved his grandchild, right? His token Jew, right? That was his token Jew to show that he's not an anti-Semite, right? Paro was sophisticated. He said, I condone the people who throw the Jews into the river. I don't believe in that. They should never do that. I don't hate Jews. I love Jews. Those anti-Semites, I can't control them. They're really bad. I'm condemning them. I mean, this is I don't know the source of it, but this is just because they were a sophisticated nation, and he didn't show on the outside that he was such a ruthless person. He was like, no, I love Jews. My daughter adopted a Jew. I'm his grandfather. Jews are great. I'm not anti-Semitic, right? All that. And he's saying he had a good relationship with Paro. So he said, you started off a relationship with Paro. When you held on to Paro, when was your relationship with him like a stick? When you held on to him, when you were in contact with him, you saw he's not so scary. You're in the palace, then you were living with the snake, right? You saw that the snake that he called himself a snake, he was just like a stick in your hand. Then you threw into the ground. He's no longer in your hand. You disconnected from when you ran away from Paro. Then suddenly you became terrified of him. He has paralyzing fear over you, right? When you see a snake, you're paralyzed of him because you're far from him. Because it's your fear and it's so distant from you. And the more time you spend away from Paro, the greater that fear becomes of Paro. And you're terrified of him. And he says, what's the solution to that? Grab back onto him. Just confront him. Not just. He says, go to Paro, grabbing hold of that snake. Just take him in your hands and your control. Confront him, grab him, talk to him. Talk to your fear. You're terrified of Paro. You ran away. You've been away from when you're 17 till 80 years old, right? A long time. Do the math. And this fear of Paro has been growing and growing and growing, right? And you're terrified of him, and you're living with this paralyzing fear of confronting Paro, but he's not that scary. When you were living in the palace with him, he was just a stick, right? So you want to get back to that state of having him a stick in your hand. You just have to grab him, go there, and see that your fear is greater than actual reality. Because in reality, I control the world, right? And it's not that fear. So it's not as fearful. He's not that dangerous. He makes himself out to be that dangerous snake. So what you need to do, he says, is go confront him. Go with Aaron, go with the stick, go with my power, the koach of Hashem, and grab onto the serpent, and you'll see that he turns right back into a stick. When you grab onto your fear and you control it, suddenly that fear, it loses all of its hold over you because it was in the fear of something is often way more terrifying than the actual situation. How many of us have a situation in our lives that in our mind, it just controlled us, it consumed us, and the actual situation was maybe painful or maybe difficult, but nothing compared to our fear of it, right? We have nothing. And Eleanor Roosevelt famously attributed the phrase that her husband, Franklin Roosevelt, said, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. And I personally felt this suddenly in my life. It suddenly hit me that 2 years ago, not that long ago, I had paralyzing anxiety, and there was a procedure I needed to do for my jaw. All of us know about my jaw. It was a surgery, not a complicated surgery, to help my jaw open. And part of the surgery involved a process called awake intubation. For whatever reason, the thought of that, even when I think about myself now, it sent me into paralyzing anxiety and tears. I would be hysterical thinking about that procedure because it is very uncomfortable.
You were supposed to have
I had anxiety, clinical anxiety. Emunah didn't help. And then Emunah doesn't help with clinical anxiety. But there is Emunah, and nothing, every time I even thought about the procedure, which would help me. But thinking about the hardama, the intubation process when I'm still awake, I would get into hysterics. It's not comfortable, but I would be so scared. I just left the hospital, the whole treatment process, and I didn't think about it for 2 years because every time I had to think about the surgery, I would get into like this terrifying fear, and I would get into paralyzing fear, crying. I couldn't even I was hysterical. I couldn't breathe when I thought about it, and that was a mental state of mind. Now, 2 years later, Baruch Hashem, I've come a long way from. I'm still have anxiety, but I've got a lot better. I've healed a lot in that. I've had much better help, much better medication, found the right medicine for me, tweaked everything, and now I'm in a much stronger mental state. And suddenly it hit me because now I need to reapproach the surgery. And now when I think about the exact same procedure, I'm just like, okay, it'll be uncomfortable for 15, 20 minutes.
Do it again?
No, I never did it because I was so afraid. I never did the surgery. My mouth still doesn't open 2 years later. And now when I think about the exact same surgery, I'm in a totally different mental place. I have no fear. It's like uncomfortable. Like people do surgeries all the time. It's such a procedure. Like it's uncomfortable. I do uncomfortable things all the time. I had babies. I had a baby, right? But even then, that thought didn't matter because it was the fear of something. So you realize that fear of something is terrifying, not the actual situation, not the actual confrontation or situation that's terrifying. And to see the change in 2 years, that, and I told my doctor and the other day, I was like, I just noticed that the same operation. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I'll book it tomorrow. Like I'll have support. I had to even have support with me at the meetings about it because I was so scared to go. I couldn't breathe. Even every time they talked about it. When I think about my mental state, then I just can't even hold back my tears. I was such a weak mental state. I was so terrified. It's such paralyzing. I'm still overloaded in life.
No, you managed to go, as you said, the clip, like stage, like you about the clip, stage.
So you see that fear of something, we often don't realize. I thought that the surgery was terrifying. And I looked up videos of people doing that procedure, not the surgery, just the intubation part, right? While they're on Twilight Zone. And I couldn't even watch. I was hysterical. Now I'm like, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll have support. I'll recover. I won't even remember it because you're in Twilight Zone. And thinking about it, the procedure is not terrifying. It's the fear of it that was paralyzing to me. And you realize so much. And Paul Coelho says this as well, that there's nothing more fear than the fear. There's nothing greater than the fear itself. That the fear of it is much more scary than the actual thing. So Hashem is saying your Paro now is a great serpent. He's distant from you because you threw him to the ground, because you're not touching him, you're not there. But if you would grab onto Paro, you would go into his palace and talk to him, you'll see it's the same Paro. He's nobody. He doesn't have the power that he says he has. He's a nobody, right? So that's how Hashem showed him with the snake that you grab onto the stick. You grab onto the snake that seems poisonous and deadly. Don't run away. And Moshe running away symbolized when he ran away from Paro's palace, right? And then suddenly that snake became more and more scary. He says, just go up to that snake. He's not that scary. Grab onto it. And Moshe was like, okay, Hashem is telling me to grab onto this poisonous snake. I'll do it, right? Because Hashem is telling me. Grabs onto the snake, and then suddenly he's a stick in his hand again that he can wield and move, and he could do whatever, right? He's no longer a snake. And he says, you'll go to Paro's palace, you'll have me with you. Bo el Paro, then next week you'll see you're with me, you're not alone, right? I'm not just sending you into the lion's den, you're coming with me. And you'll see it's not that scary as you think. And this is a message in how we can confront so many of our fears that when we, and I also had another personal example of when we confront something, sometimes when we're afraid of something happening, the best thing, it's called exposure therapy or exposure treatment. Not saying to do this all the time, but when you can build up enough courage to expose yourself to it in a small way, in different small ways, suddenly you realize that it's not as bad as you thought. And the fear of it is actually much worse than the actual thing that you're fearing, right? It's like we try to force our kids to taste something because we're like, it's not that bad, right? But in a real way in life, exposure therapy is actually the way to deal with different OCD things. When somebody's so afraid of something and then they are exposed to it, they're like, oh, I did that thing and nothing happened to me because of that. And we expose them in small ways until they realize that their fear of it is actually not founded on reality. And we give this, and this is really the source of so many of our situations in life. And the word for it is, so I had a personal story that I don't want to share the details because it's so vulnerable, but I guess like we all have our greatest fears of like being worthless, sometimes of like someone, for us, it's so many different for so many of us, right? Our greatest fear is being worthless, being unvalued, being unsuccessful, being seen as a nobody, being undeserving, right? And once I got the opportunity in a very painful way to be exposed to my greatest fears, right? Somebody at their worst state, in their lower place, when they were in a low place in their life, literally verbalized to me everything that drives my anxiety. Like my biggest fear of being a failure, being a nobody, being seen as not worthy, being seen as not enough. And the person verbalized to me, they said, like, what do you do? I don't want to repeat that they said. And it was, if I say that within an hour, it was the most healing, cathartic experience I've ever had in my entire life. Because I was confronted with everything that drives, what fuels me to do things is like my fear of not being enough, my fear of failing everybody, my fear of people saying to me, what does she do all day? She does nothing all day, right? She's a nobody. And what pushes me to do things is like someone saying, you're nothing, you're nobody. What do you do all day? You just like do nothing, right? Are you successful? All the other shluchas do this, etc. And that drives a lot of my anxiety. And having someone say that to my face, what I'm afraid of them saying, I was like, oh, I'm hit live. I don't believe it. It's not true. It was the first time I was able, in so many ways. First of all, it happened, and the fear of it no longer drives me because it happened already and still here. It happened. The worst thing happened. It's not even like it wasn't even so bad. It did happen. And it was okay. Like, I'm okay. It was an hour later. I'm like, when it hit me, I was like in shock. And then I was like, wow, like my biggest fears actually happened. Everything I'm afraid of. And I'm still okay. Not only that, I was then able to answer that and say, like, do I believe that? Do I believe that I'm worthless? Do I believe that I do nothing? No. I know that, I'm not doing all the things everyone else does, but that's because I have a different life than everyone else. Not everyone has the same challenges or struggles or lifestyle that I have. And that's okay. And being able to answer that, I was never able to answer that. It was literally probably the most healing experience of my life to have my fears presented to me, actualized. And what gripped me for so long was suddenly powerless, because now I know that if it happens, even if my biggest fear is realized and everyone says, you are worthless, get out of here, throws rotten tomatoes at me, right? I'll just pick myself up and say, I don't believe that, right? And it's not true, and you're misinformed. It was the most healing experience to be freed from and that's what Alshich says, is that Hashem telling Moshe, you're afraid of the serpent, you just have to grab it. Grab the serpent, the thing that you fear the most, and then you'll realize that it's just a stick, right? Doesn't have the power over you that you give to it. And that is how you should confront Paro and your fears, and Moshe's fears of confronting the Jewish people in Paro. He says, grab onto the serpent, the thing that's most scary to you, take it, be closer to it, because the more far you are from it, right? Enter that conversation. If you're terrified of having to confront somebody or a conversation, you're so scared of how it's going to go, right? Or you're saying something to somebody or what they're going to say to you, just confront it, just approach it, right? And then suddenly it's like, oh, that's not so bad, right? Like, right, just get it over with is like kind of it. But go to that thing, do the opposite of what you want to do, right? Do the opposite of what you think you're going to do. Everything the opposite. You want to run away from the snake, do the exact opposite. Don't run away from your fears, because that is this danger. And when you get right to it, right, and expose it, and I'm going to go really deep right now. That is when we have a consuming emotion that is terrifying, shame, guilt, really it's worthlessness, feeling unvalued. If we start to feel ashamed of ourselves, the natural reaction is to run away from that feeling. That's what we all do. You see a snake, you run away from it. A snake, it's our demon, right? We feel a demon. We feel a really bad feeling of shame. I did something really bad. I did something not nice. I did something that's below me. I feel ashamed. And our natural thing is to run away from it. And we do that. And when we do that, right, we create a shame spiral. We give it so much more power. And we grow into someone who's hiding from so many feelings. And it takes over us. The more we run away from any feeling. If I'm feeling any feeling that I think I shouldn't be having. If I'm feeling, it's jealous. If, let's say I'm feeling of like, my kids are, I don't even want to, things we don't like to say when people are like, my kids are ruining my life. And we want to run away from that feeling, because I shouldn't be thinking that kids are the biggest blessing. Some people are trying to have kids. The more we run away from any feeling that we have, any emotion that we have, if it's jealousy and you're like, I shouldn't be jealous, everyone should do everything. We run away from those feelings that we don't want to have, those uncomfortable feelings, and they grow and grow and grow in their hold of us.
Then we start to eat.
And then we eat to numb that feeling. And we now have phones to numb ourselves. We eat, we binge, we buy, whatever it is, right? Or and eventually some people are running from such deep-rooted shame, or even sexual abuse, right? They run from that, and then there comes addictions, because they're running from so much pain. And we do the opposite of what your natural instinct is. Like Moshe, if you see a snake, you run away. And what we're meant to do is the exact opposite. What will heal us the most is to confront that feeling and to be with that feeling and to just grab onto it, not even hurt it, just hold on to it. Just get a little closer to it, right? The one thing that's far from the thing that you're running from, get a little close to it, be in the same room as it, right? Just talk to it. And then suddenly it's not scary anymore, right? And it's such a hard thing to do. If I'm feeling jealous, the hardest thing is to confront that feeling and say, okay, I'm feeling jealous. That's how I'm feeling, right? And it's so hard to do that because we're just running away from that feeling. If I'm feeling ashamed of myself, and shame is a really bad feeling, to just sit with that shame and say, I am ashamed and it feels really bad. And to sit with that fear of that feeling and what it's going to feel like, and to do something that feels, and you're just like so uncomfortable, right? To be in an uncomfortable room with somebody, but you do it. And then suddenly it loses its grip over you, right? And suddenly the shame, it's like, okay, so I'm ashamed. And the only way to heal from shame is to talk about shame, right? And that's why there's an amazing man, Eli Nash, who speaks publicly, even in his TED Talk, about his addiction. He had a porn addiction. He speaks publicly about it. And he says the one way to heal from addiction is to talk about the shame. Because when you hide from the shame, you abuse and you substance abuse and you do different things to hide it. And the most healing thing is you have to get out and talk about it. And that's why you see addicts talking about their addiction, because the more they talk about it, it doesn't grip them anymore. It loses its power. So we talk about it. Talking about it is exposure therapy. I'm not hiding from it. It doesn't control me. And talking to Paro, like he says, just go to Paro and talk to him. You'll see he's not that scary, right? He doesn't have that much power that he says he has. He's not that great at all. He is not the God that he says he is. He's a nobody loser, right? He's a nobody loser, or the situation is not that great for you, right? So just go and talk about it. Verbalize the thing that you're hiding from the most. If you're finding yourself hiding from something, which happens to me multiple times a day, I go to my room or go to my phone to hide from something I'm feeling and it's uncomfortable. Find that thing and find out what I'm hiding from, and then I don't have to hide from it anymore. And it is it's just magic. It's a magic trick. You can do it with your wand, right? So Shem is saying, this is it. How are you going to have the courage to go? Watch, and I'll show you. This stick you had when you were with Paro, he wasn't that scary. Then you threw him to the ground, you ran away. He was terrified because you're running away from him and you're running away from something that you're afraid of. That's his power. Just hold on to the stick in your hands, confront, just grab onto it a little bit, hug it, just send compassion to that feeling. And sometimes we don't even know what that feeling is we're running away from. Sometimes it's just the first step is just to feel it in our body. Say, where is it in my body? It's in my throat. It's choking me. It's in my stomach. It's in my gut. It's in my head. It's in my jaw. It's in my hands. Where is that feeling? Breathe into it. Not to get over the feeling. We're not trying to release that feeling. We're trying to confront the feeling, not trying to get over it, just to be with that feeling and to give it space and to feel the feelings of it. What does it feel like? How does it feel in my body? What color is it? What shape is it? What does feeling feel like? And then hopefully we can give a name to the feeling eventually. And by naming it and by talking about it to ourselves, by writing it, by sharing it with somebody, this is what I was feeling. It loses. So it says that it's Brene Brown. This is something I learned from Brene Brown. Obviously, I forgot to credit her, that shame's biggest power is silence, right? Shame's biggest power over us is silence. And when we talk about shame, it loses all of its power.
You let it out.
And shame is all feelings. But I think that shame is the root of a lot of negative feelings. If I don't want to talk about my jealousy, it's usually because I'm ashamed of my jealousy. So usually shame is at the root of when I'm jealous of somebody or when I'm feeling something I shouldn't be feeling. I'm ashamed of that feeling. I'm ashamed that I'm feeling like resentful to my children for ruining, everything good in my life. God forbid, even though, it's a shameful feeling to have. And that shame, if I talk about at least about the shame in that feeling, then I can get through it and it doesn't grip me. I don't have to hide from that and suffer so much. And suffering comes from the fear of confronting feelings. This is just part one of this part two share, but I think I'm not even going to get into part two because this message from the Alshich is so powerful and is so life-changing. And that was Moshe's strength, to just go there and to not just go there, to be empowered and to say that this is going to be this is not going to be as scary. As soon as I talk to Paro, get there and verbalize to him what I need to.
Don't you think that Moshe trusts Hashem and he shouldn't have these feelings of being fearful?
No, because we're human. If even Moshe was a tzaddik, right? It's so empowering to know. And I think that that's not that you're toxic, but that's something that we all feel inside of us, and that blocks us from healing. And I think that for years I felt the way that you're saying, that's like, well, I should have emunah. That feeling leads to so much shame. Of course, we should have emunah.
That we should have emunah.
We should have emunah, right? And that's what makes us feel ashamed so often. It's like, why don't I believe I should have emunah?
Yes, right.
But we're human and we want to have emunah. You say, I know I should have emunah and I want to have emunah, but I'm also human. I have two parts of me, and I'm afraid. And to get to that emunah, we first have to acknowledge that right now right now my emunah is blocked. Right now my emunah is covered up by fear, and that's real. And that's how Hashem made me. I'm feeling afraid. Even Moshe was afraid, right? And I'm human too. And to accept that and give space to it. And then comes the second step that you're saying is so important. Emunah can only come once we've accepted that, we're afraid, that we have those blockages to emunah. If we don't uncover those blockages, and we just keep thinking, well, I should have emunah, I should believe. And do you know that so many people suffer from mental health struggles? I think, me included, feel so much guilt for not having emunah, for feeling depressed, for feeling down and feeling like you give up because I should have emunah. And for me as a Lubavitch chassid, and there's a lot of trauma for me and many fellow Chabad people who have trauma of not trauma from the system, but trauma from self-talk of of somebody reading a Rebbe letter, don't be sad, you should have emunah that everything comes from Hashem.
Right.
That is a painful thing to hear because it doesn't allow space for your feelings. And that's a letter that's important for somebody who just needs to remember. For many of us, I can wake up in the morning and I could be sad and be like, remember, Hashem is giving you strength to have your kids. That's amazing. But for somebody who's struggling with mental health, when they hear that, it's not only not helpful, it's painful and it's triggering. It's triggering.
Clinical.
So for many of us, not even just clinical. Sometimes you don't even have to have a clinical diagnosis. Sometimes you're in a pit.
Yes, but I think
An adult with a kid, with the child, your inner child. Yeah.
No, I'm a kid. That says this is how,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
I've had a friend in a situation where someone said that to her and I've heard it. And I said to them, I know you have emunah and I know she wants emunah, but she's not in a place she can say that now. And by saying that, like you said, it's not helping her. It's
Such a
not
painful
helping
thing.
her.
And
It's just her head won't
especially when
accept
somebody
it.
loses a husband. Oh, we have a emunah that Hashem is going to help you through. You cannot say that.
The Rebbe said that's something you can't say to someone else.
No.
So, and I
absolutely
think
not.
that it's hard. Yeah.
Themselves hasn't been in that situation. They're going to say it without realizing
Yeah.
that they're damaging. So I try to.
And I don't think it's only somebody who's in
in
mental health clinically. I think anyone who's in a dark pit,
Right.
even anyone who's feeling stuck and feeling like I can't get to emunah, to hear, well, you should just have emunah.
Right.
Sometimes if the Rebbe is telling it to you directly, then it picks you up, it gives you that strength because you're having the tzaddik giving it emunah, right? Feeding it to you, then of course. But that Rebbe letter is not meant to be read by somebody or read to somebody who's suffering so much and saying, you think I don't want that emunah? You think I don't know that? You think I don't feel embarrassed that I'm feeling this way so much and ashamed?
You have to help me get through the day.
I need to get through now. And I want that emunah. And that the fact that I don't have the emunah doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means that you're a person in a dark place with so many concealments on your soul, and that you want to get to that place, and you will get there, but only once. And also only once you can first acknowledge that you're not there yet, and you can give love and space and compassion and healing to that self. You will get there. And you know, the truth is that your neshama deep down also has that emunah. At the same time, it's not like I don't have that emunah. My soul knows that all the time, and that's why I believe it. I believe that that's true, but it doesn't help me in my day-to-day life. So we say, yes, of course Hashem is running the world. I know that. My soul knows that. At every moment, I don't forget it even, right? And not even that I forgot it. It's that it doesn't translate into my body because there's chemical things blocking it. It's that I know that in the fiber of my soul, but that can't translate into my day-to-day because there's flooding of my system that doesn't allow that munah to come through. And I need to get rid of the flooding through therapy, through treatment, whatever that looks like, through help, through compassion, through time, through healing.
I would have known about it, Luna. They say, right from the beginning, when you raise your children, every Friday night you should be talking about them.
100%.
I didn't do that.
But emunah, but it's okay because emunah is in our DNA, and you don't need to talk about it. Emunah, that brings it out more in a conscious way. But emunah is in our DNA. A child has emunah in their DNA. They believe everything. They see the source. Little children see angels. They see the neshama. You don't need to convince your child. And it's still in our DNA. Emunah never leaves us. It says Jewish people are b'nei Yisrael, b'ninim, b'nei maminim. So the emunah is in us. We don't need to tell somebody. Sometimes, in many cases, you need to be reminded about emunah, and being reminded on a daily basis of emunah is so invigorating. But sometimes when you're in pain and you want to have the emunah, and you know about it, but it's not translating in your body,
not only
that, that's the time that we have to say, not that God forbid don't talk to them about emunah, but say, I know you have emunah in your body, and I believe all that right now, and that also, and at the same time, you should also be sad, and you're also afraid and sad because your body doesn't believe that your body is not translating that because you're blocked for whatever reason, chemically blocked, emotionally blocked, traumatically blocked. Sometimes somebody doesn't believe the emunah because they had a trauma, right? And that's okay. The Rebbe didn't tell Holocaust survivors of Auschwitz, you should have the emunah, that it was all for a reason. Never, right? Not that it's not there, not that they don't have emunah at their core, and they do, because at the end of their day, they have that emunah. It comes out. They say Shema Yisrael. They survive. They have that emunah in their core. Maybe they're afraid, and their fear takes over the emunah, and that's for that's what they need to work through that fear and talk about it, like as Edgar says, and work through that fear and talk about it and heal it and treat it. But the number one stage to dealing with something that paralyzes us and something that's terrifying and controlling us is to know to do the opposite instinct of, instead of running from it, to just go to that uncomfortable place and be there for as long as we could be there, and know that you're not there alone, that Hashem is there with you in that space, and to take someone there if you need to, talk to someone in a healing space, to be in that space. And then also, you're right, emunah, to know Hashem is with you at the same time. You have emunah that Hashem is going to help me through this stage as well. My emunah right now is that I'm going through this uncomfortable healing process and this pain, and that I know that even here Hashem is with me, but I'm not upset at myself for not having that emunah, because I have the emunah, it's just not translating, right?
No, who is it? Arush that talks about Arush, but so I read his, he talks about it, and I learned about it, and I go, it was really helpful.
Yeah.
The emunah thing.
Yeah.
Except, God forbid, I think about if something happened, God forbid, to anybody in my family, whatever. I wonder how my emunah would be.
Yeah.
That's the real
emunah,
test.
by the way, the word emunah is one of the translations of the word emunah. It's faith, but it also means a craft.
Oh.
It's imun. It's something you're training, right? It's la'amen, to train for something.
Yeah.
When you're training for anything in Hebrew, it's emunah. It's la'amen. I'm training for it. Me'amenet. I'm training.
Oh.
And emunah is something that we learn, and the Rebbe spoke about this a lot. We need to. It's a craft. It's a muscle you have to exercise, because the emunah is there, but it might just be not remembered when you need it, right? Suddenly when you need it, it's like, where's my emunah? You have to exercise emunah. And there's only 2 books that the Rebbe always had on his desk. And one of the books was Shar Emunah B'Bitachon, Shar B'Bitachon Emunah, Shar B'Bitachon, sorry, it's right here. They just translated it from Chabad Halavavos by Rabbeinu Bachya. It was translated into English. It is such an amazing book. It was always a small copy of it on the corner of the Rebbe's desk. Rebbe wanted everyone to learn it, because your emunah is there always, right? Someone might have a skill for music or really be a famous painter, but if they're not practicing their music skills, they're going to go dull. And you might have emunah in your blood, and we do. We need to practice our emunah, right? Not just come to the shir once a week, but maybe even have like an affirmation of faith every day. Have signs of emunah on your wall. Have reminders. Talk to your kids. Practice it in them, right? But because when you're young, it's in your blood, it's in your being. And as we grow up, the world and the klippas of the world hide this emunah. And this book was a translation of Shar Emunah B'Bitachon in a beautiful way. If anyone wants me to buy you a copy, they sell it in Israel. You can order it online.
I have to write it down.
Gates of Trust. Maybe we'll start a share on this because it's very musar in a way.
Nice.
It's musar, but it's strengthening, and it strengthens
is
your
that
and you
English or
exercise
Hebrew?
that muscle. It's both. It's amazing with explanations
wow.
because it's not, and it's a lot of musar and it's a lot, but it lifts you up because it reminds you. And if you have that muscle, it does help you. And even with, and I'm not saying, God forbid, that someone with a clinical illness, mental illness, shouldn't learn, shouldn't strengthen their emunah. The opposite, it helps. It reminds you that you could get through the illness. It shouldn't be used as, don't you have emunah, but rather your emunah will help you know that you could get through the illness, that you'll be okay. And that's so helpful. So your emunah should be, just know that you'll be okay, that you'll get through this, that you'll come out on the other side, that people have gone through, depression and mental illness and come on the other side, and you can do this. You have the kochos in you. So then the emunah is used in a little bit of a different way. But
also I learned that if you have emunah, you practice it all your life, then you shouldn't get into a depression. You shouldn't get into, you know what I mean? That's what I read.
Well, that's like saying that's like saying if you have real emunah, then you should never get, God forbid, you should never be sick. Then you'll never get sick. You'll never get cancer. God forbid. If someone has emunah, they'll never get cancer. They'll never get cancer because they have emunah. A mental illness is
no. He was saying basically, if you have real emunah, practice it all the time. You shouldn't be sad because you know that Hashem is watching you.
Yes, ideally, but we're also human, and we also have another part of us. If we were only a godly soul, like Moshe Rabbeinu or like Avraham, then yes. But because we're also a human soul, and because we are affected by the world, then in an ideal, perfect world, maybe, but we're also human and we're also afflicted by, by this afflictions of life, and we're in the goalless world. And that's why we need to demand Mashiach. And the Rebbe was very big on being chutzpahdik with Hashem. And you were saying before to demand Mashiach, everyone should say, the Rebbe said we should be chutzpahdik and demand chutzpah. We should have chutzpah.
And say, Hashem, why are you
Hashem,
not sending
bring
this
Mashiach. He promised us
already?
Mashiach. We have enough of the suffering. Scream out and demand to Hashem that he fulfill his promise and bring Mashiach. He said not to be nice, not to be soft, to demand from Hashem Mashiach, and to demand and scream ad masai, and yelling at Hashem and saying enough is enough. Enough is enough.
So why are we not getting on Facebook, everybody?
People do, and the Rebbe encouraged it. It was pre-Facebook days, but we should be. People do it. You're following the right people.
You see that?
We follow the right people. So I'm going to end this year here, even though that was only part one. I'll give you a little teaser of the Alter Rebbe in Torah Or has a very deep mimer, taking this to an even deeper level, like way deeper, taking the snake and the stick to show us that the snake, which is klipa, really ultimately it turned into a stick. And not only that the snake itself is the stick. It comes from the stick. That you think that it's not like we have to destroy Paro and he's separate from us. It's not that the snake and the stick are two separate things. You think, we need to come and kill Paro. No, Paro's whole energy is from the stick, from the staff of Hashem. It comes from Kedusha. And by Moshe's stick by our own stick, then swallowing the stick of Paro, it's saying, yes, you can do magic, but where do you think your magic comes from? Your sorcerers can turn your snake into stick, but their whole entire source is from this stick, and then their stick is from Kedusha, right? The Kedusha, the stick represented by the stick of Aaron, it swallowed all of them and said, that is their source. They come from that. So saying, yes, you have magic. Yes, you exist. But where do you think all of your existence comes from? And in a moment, Hashem can change it. Your Neelis is your God. I'll show you tomorrow. The new Makkah, right, in season 3, right, is going to be turning water into blood.
But why is
and
Pharaoh
turning it into blood?
Swallowing.
So that is the
why are they able to create that magic with the
because they use black magic.
Because Hashem gives koach. So it's a good question. So Minna has a really good question. Hashem gives a lot of koach. Why does Paro have koach? Why is Paro so powerful? Paro is very powerful. Where does his power come from? Paro has power. He's saying, yes, you have power. All of your power comes from me, from Hashem. Not only is the power
Hashem gave him the power.
See, that's the exact message, that your power of doing all this magic, your greatness, you're very powerful, Paro. All of your power is straight from Hashem. Hashem is giving you this power in order to create free choice. Because if Hashem didn't give power to other klipas, right, then this whole world wouldn't be pointless, because it would be just like the before world where it was just angels with no power to evil, just pure goodness, and there's no choice. Right? There's no free choice. If there's no power given to the other side to tempt us, to bring us to do bad, to evil, there would never be a choice to serve Hashem. We would be in a world where all you could do is serve Hashem, right? And then there's no choice. It's like being on an island with one man, and he has to marry you because you're the only girl in the world. You never know if he really loves you, right? you probably don't love you. He just was forced to marry you, right? Hashem is like, okay, so we're the only person you have to marry. But it's much deeper than that. It's like you're forced to it. The only way, you have no tests, right? The test of a true relationship is when you've gone through things and you're still stuck together, when we choose and commit. Not when Hashem forces us into being there's no relationship. A relationship is when you have temptations. If you're locked in a box with somebody in your relationship, that's not a true relationship that tests the time, right? If it's just the two of you in angelic bliss. The true test of a relationship that's real and that's togetherness is that you've gone through the struggles of life, you've gone through raising children or not, right? You've gone through everything that life has thrown you, and you're together and you love and you choose one another, that despite having other options, despite someone else more beautiful coming along, I still choose you. That's love. I choose you even though there's other people. So Hashem's saying there has to be others in order that we choose Hashem from our will and not that it's forced upon us. So otherness is important. So that is a very valid question. And Hashem is saying in the Torah, he's saying, yes, you have power. Yes, you're great. All of your power is from me. I'll take it away in a moment. And you'll see that in a moment where I turn your God into blood, into something that's destructive, that will kill you. If you drink it, you'll be right. Everything that you have is from me. And in a moment, I can turn that away and take it away and turn it right back and change your source. I can change you, who are the serpent, into a stick that does nothing, and back and forth. And it's much deeper than that, right? The snake represents, the stick represents, why does the stick represent Kedusha? And the snake represents all of evil and all of, because the snake, first of all, is the beginning, the root of all evil. Everything started with the snake. The snake is not capable of walking in a straight line. A snake can't slither straight. Do you know that? That a snake can't just go from here to you. If a snake, if this is a snake and I want to get to you, I'm going to have to move the zigzag way in order to get to you. It can't go directly. And if the stick, it's straight, a stick is straight, look, it goes straight. And the or and the stick in Kedusha, the difference between Kedusha and Klipa, it's all from Hashem. I said I'm not going to do this second part. This is the Torah. Everything comes from Hashem. All or comes from Hashem. The difference is that in Kedusha, it comes straight and you could see that it's holy. In Kedusha, you see that it's godly. You see that it's holy. You see the soul, everything holy. Whenever there's Klipa, then it covers itself. There's more coverings and layers, and you don't see that it comes from God. It seems evil. It seems like it gets to the point that it's so twisted that the light from Hashem doesn't come in such a direct way that it's purely holy and it's clear that this is holiness. Anything that's holy is when I could see, look at something when I'm being holy, it's like this is for God. I see this is from Hashem. Unholiness is when I look at something in my life and I'm like, why did you do that to me? That's klipa, because I'm forgetting that you didn't do that to me, right? You're just, it's from Hashem. You're just the root, right? The root that Hashem took it to get it to me. It's when we forget that everything comes straight from Hashem. When we have this detour, that is the root of everything evil in the world. Remembering that, thinking that something doesn't come from Hashem. Anger comes from being angry because you forget that it comes straight from Hashem. I'm angry at you. It's not from you. It's straight from Hashem. But that's what klipa is. Klipa is what turns us in other ways, and it zigzags. And Paro was the root of all serpents of serpents. He covered up everything to the point that he didn't even know where his source from. He didn't even know who he is at his core. He was completely distorted. He doesn't even believe in Hashem, even though that's exactly where he's getting his source from. Right? It's having such a thick layer. That is the source of all klipa. All klipa is not knowing, not seeing, and kedusha. And literally, when Mashiach comes, he says, what is going to happen when Mashiach comes? It's not that different. All Hashem is going to do is straighten out the curve, straighten out the snake. And he's just going to show us what already exists. It already is that you and you and you, your entire being is Hashem bringing you into being. Every moment, everything you're doing, everything that happens to you is straight from Hashem. It's just that we don't see it now. So Hashem is just going to remove the layers, the klipas, all of the layers, all of the distortions that distort the world and distort the pigments to make us see the world in such a distorted reality. People see the world in such a messed up and distorted way. And there's competition and jealousy because if I don't see things as they truly are. If I saw that Hashem gives me exactly what I need and Hashem gives you what you need, then I wouldn't be jealous, right? If someone next door to you opens a new fashion designing clothes, like a new fashion company right next door in the same thing, you naturally have jealousy. There's nothing wrong with that. But that comes from, because we don't get to see that our man comes from Hashem the way it did in a direct way in the Midbar. If we see that Hashem is sending you your money and her money and that no one could take that away from you because it's not going to change anything at all. If we could see that, that's a time of Mashiach when no jealousy will exist. It says that no kina and no tachris, no competition, no jealousy. Wars come from jealousy and competition and that creates war until it becomes right. It becomes and possession and ownership and wanting things that aren't mine and wanting to take things that don't belong to me. That creates war, all strife, all pain, all evil comes from not being able to see that it comes from Hashem. Mashiach comes, there won't be jealousy because if you know, even if I know, right, that someone else is getting a shir at the same time as me, started a new shir tomorrow, right, next door, now I'm going to be jealous, I promise you, right? I'm human, I'm admitting it out loud. If someone else starts a Chabad, Hasidic shir, any shir at the same time as me, and someone else goes to it, I'll be very jealous, I'll be hurt, I'll feel like you're taking away, my worthiness, my worthiness, my sense of like, my sense of self is like, people like I'm worthy, right? People want to hear me, but then someone else does it. I'm just going to feel worthless. I'm going to feel upset. I'm going to feel jealous. All those feelings come. But if I knew that, if I could see how Hashem designs it, that exactly what's meant to happen is going to happen, and that's not going to change anything because nothing's going to happen. I'm going to get exactly my parnasa. Someone opening up the same pizza shop next door is not going to change anything because it doesn't change anything, right? That's a famous story. It doesn't change anything because your man comes from Hashem. You can't leave over man for tomorrow. You can't take someone else's man. You get yours, they get theirs, and it doesn't change anything. We would be so happy for them. We would say, amazing, even more Torah, right? So when I'm at my highest self, and what I want to be is like my highest self, like the more Torah, the better, right? That's when I'm able to be aligned and see that how it comes. But when I'm distorted, then we tend to have those feelings, and that's what we have to work through those feelings. First, we have to confront those feelings, feel them, and then answer them and say, you know what? The more Torah, the better. That's what Rebbe always said. That like when someone would come from me and say, someone opened up a Isha Torah right where there's Chabad or another Chabad, he's like, that's beautiful, that's amazing, because the Rebbe saw things as they were, and then the person's like, oh yeah, now you can show me how it is, right? So now I see that is amazing. The more Torah, the better. So that's how we can align ourselves, by seeing things as they come directly. And the snake represents this being, not seeing that the source is from Hashem, seeing that it's you, that you're taking my parnasa, you're having the same thing as me, you're taking away my existence, you're taking away from me. Right? And it's so ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous to say that. The more, the better, right? There's more to go around. You think Hashem doesn't have enough parnasa for everybody, right? Imagine someone has a baby and you're like, you took my child. I was going to get pregnant and now I can't get pregnant because you had a baby. That's what it's like saying, right? Your baby is your baby. My baby is my baby. You didn't have to take my child, right? It's like, oh, because you had twins. Now I'm not going to have twins. You took my twins, right? That's not how it goes. That's not how life goes. And we know that. And it's ridiculous. Yeah, but we do that with so many other things. Yeah. And we do that with so many other things. We're like, oh, you just took my job. It wasn't your job, all right? But all of jealousy, all hatred, all of the pain all the pain inside of us is because we don't get to see that. Not because we're bad, because Hashem doesn't show it to us. He conceals it through the snake, which is Hashem's creation, to hide the truth so that we have free choice, that we can work through those things, we can overcome it. Mashiach comes, the snakes will be straightened, right? We're gonna literally tickle and fix the sin of the snake, which was to take Adam and Chava, they were hearing things straight from Hashem, and to distort it and to turn it and to take it away and say that's not right, that's not how it was. So all of the distortions we're trying to clarify and see, and if we can remind ourselves every day to look at the stick and turn the snakes into sticks, say, what am I distorting right now? What's causing me pain? My pain is from a distortion. Any pain that you have is because of the distortion of how things are truly coming, right? I'm distorted in thinking that you took something that's mine, right? That someone has something that's mine, or that I'm not getting something that's mine. I'm in pain because I want a house and there's no houses left to buy, right? That's, let's say, making me upset. And now they bought the last house and they bought my last house. That wasn't your house. You weren't supposed to get that house. And that's what causes you pain, right? I don't have a house to live in. Well, you know what? If you understood and you could see and take away the distortions and the beliefs that you have that someone else took something that's yours, you wouldn't be in pain. So it's being able to straighten that and to look at the source and to see how things come from. That was the deeper message of Taparo, to break that first klipa. The prerequisite to all the 10 plagues leaving Mitzrayim is first, let's break this idea that you think that your power comes from you. Your power, you have power, your greatness, all of it comes from Hashem. Let's show you that. Your snake was literally turned into a stick. It's not two separate things. They're one and the same. Thank you for joining. Hopefully you took something from this part 2.
Very nice.
Have a wonderful week. Whoa, part 2 was an hour.
Sorry, what's your name?
Oh, please don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share this so that we
can
could grow the inspiration, grow the Torah, and feel free to sponsor or share. Chabad.efrat.com/donate. Any donation amount helps. So, Minna, you never have to be sorry. You're a gift from Hashem.
You're offline now.
Done.
I was thinking